This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by Globalspeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of Globalspeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Ashu, welcome to Tech Radio.
Thank you, Frank. Good afternoon. How are you?
I tell you what, I'm excited. You know, very often we get a lot of players that are obvious subject matter experts, and clearly you get an opportunity to learn a lot. But there's very few people that I think have walked the path for so long and have actually been, I think, in many cases, almost a pioneering spirit and a pioneering talent. And of course, I'm talking about you in the various roles you've played. I mean, you've been in consulting firms and a number of other dynamics that have given you different perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new media era. Welcome to the digital transformation. And guess who's here with us? Pretty much the guy that knows it all. Give us a little insight on what you think it is today, and let's talk a little bit about where we might see it going in the next couple of years, Ashu.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Frank, and I appreciate the quick introduction. But as you just mentioned, right, digital transformation, so much buzz about it these days, but to be honest with you, the way I look at it is, and of course I don't want to date myself, but you know, ever since I've come on this planet to work, I've been doing digital transformation. And what I mean by that is, whatever the technology allows, if something can be automated or made simple, people always, you know, tend to gravitate towards that, whether it was writing books and then the printing press and hence information technology after that in the spectrum. Digital transformation, the way I look at it is, yes, there's been a little bit of buzz in terms of what the capabilities are and what people can do with it. So, of course, the digital lifestyle, whether it's around, you know, how you research products, how you look at services in terms of buying them, in terms of discussing them, all those technologies that are out there is what is leading to this whole digital transformation. And of late, a lot of companies are saying that, you know, as they look at their competitors, as they look at their ecosystem, they wonder and say, what is it that I need to do to be at the cutting edge of this capability so that A, I'm not left behind, and B, can I create some competitive advantage? And yeah.
Well, just a quick, when you say that you know, the challenge in my estimation, though, it's not about necessarily just, you know, staying competitive. I think in some cases when you're talking about an old business model with legacy systems, I mean, we can talk digital transformation and talk, in my world, digital media. But now when we start talking about, and I'm hoping we're going to get into the supercomputers and high-speed connectivity and all, obviously, you know, what's funny, the last mile ends up becoming the Internet of Things and not a tethered phone. Remember when we used to argue what way it was going to be? Okay, so in that environment, don't you feel it's almost, and I don't want to be, you know, over the top about it, but I don't think many of the players, many of the first generation and small business owners, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, they better look and get the kind of help they're going to need, because guess what? It is transforming. So I just want to inject the fact that it isn't just a progression; it's a whole new ballgame.
That's absolutely right. As someone said, right, like digital transformation, when it's done right, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But when you do it all wrong, it's just a really fast caterpillar, right? So the thing is, and I think you alluded to it. So the key is that I think why recently it's kind of getting more attention is that some of the capabilities, and the way I look at capabilities is, of course, you've got to have some organizational capability, some process capability, and then comes the system capability. But I think the technology capability, the third one, is changing things, right? There's new things coming. People are pushing the boundaries. So 2 or 3 trends that have helped of late, I would say in the last 2 or 3, 4 years, a lot of our clients, whether it's, you know, predictive analytics, big data, whether it's, as you just mentioned, IoT connected everything, right? When you have cheap sensors that can send data and you can track it to do things, that's what IoT is.
Wait a minute. I almost got a nosebleed how fast things changed. It was data. Then it was structured data. Then it was predictive data. Then it was, you know, and then it suddenly disappeared and became analytics. And all of a sudden now it's hidden in I think, in terms of the base of an artificial intelligence and ubiquitous, right? So, I mean, at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, my kids are born only in the digital era, right? So when I talk to them, everything has got to be, the way that you interact with systems has got to be either through, you know, speech or at the most through a little bit of typing. There's no more written word and things like that. So what happens is, as you just mentioned, structured data, some data captured, and now unstructured. And people are just talking about everything. And I know that someone mentioned a quote, there's so much of an overload of information. some exec that I was just talking to recently, he said it's not about information overload. I think it's just a filter failure. But you got to focus on some of that signal in all that data that is being produced, and then how do you actually use that for incenting the right decisions within your organization and imbibing some of the behavior that you're looking for, right? So that's what predictive analytics is, to say that, okay, whether I'm using, a mobile phone to look at, my omni-channel banking or kind of retail, how these guys shop and kind of research things, all that is good, but all the data that's being produced has to be, kind of consumed and focused on what we're trying to do with the company. And that's what digital transformation really is all about, because as they say, right, explosive transformation never ever gets approved in the company, and incremental transformation never gets started. So what you have to do is, and I talk to a lot of execs these days, they say that, what the problem in this ecosystem is, that even the products to do all this is changing so fast, there's been no kind of consolidation of sorts. He almost called it an alphabet soup of technology. He said, there's an Apache this to do whatever, then there's a tool called Zookeeper on Z to kind of, produce data and kind of tap it in. So what we do with companies is we say, okay, the first thing you need to do is, instead of getting overwhelmed, is look at your value chain truly. Try to understand the 4 or 5 high-level pieces of capabilities that you will need. Within each one of them, whether it's supply chain on the back end or front end on the customer side, what are some of the capabilities that are almost predominantly important, and then start thrashing out the capabilities below that to prop them up. And whether you call it social CRM or mobile or whatever have you, those are the things you've got to think through and stay true to your value chain.
One of the challenges, I think, most, again, I've spanned both generations, I guess, in terms of business acumen, and certainly from the standpoint of the established business training that you get out of some of the major schools. I can remember when the conversation was talking about how it was moving so fast, we would say, well, that was 20 minutes ago. You have to think ahead of it. And you would think, what is MIT going to teach them? And so now, here you've got, I'll take an example. I've got a very good friend, a client of mine who's been around with me for many, 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 many years. He's probably, you're going to love this, he's the largest post-form countertop manufacturer in the United States.
Yeah.
Now you have to understand what a post-form countertop is, because I think most people just say, I did a kitchen top. Yeah. This guy actually kind of created the way it was automated. Before him, they literally made it handmade. Wow. Well, the point is, he just in the last couple of years sold a business. He had a couple of jet planes. This is selling countertops. But he there was a cliche that said a man can make a mistake for years and call it experience. You could not move him into the digital era because he wasn't going to change a thing. Because if you look at me and you say, Frank, hey, you got a plane? You're going to tell me I got to move it? I think, unfortunately, that's the challenge. Because then when you throw it into the marketplace, and depending on which way you're looking at it, but if you're looking at it as a consumer of the services, it is a large bunch of noise. It's very difficult to get over the hyperbole. Absolutely. I can take 5 or 6 of good friends, some are clients, you go to their website and you can take the logos out and put another logo in, and it's very close to being exactly the same thing.
Oh yeah, there's no real differentiation because of so much going on. And as you said, this friend of yours who's doing a lot of those physical products, and that's the key, right? If you're in a complete business that is only producing, IP-based products versus physical assets, your strategy is different, right? So you just mentioned, right, 18-minute span time. So someone actually told me that whatever there was a time when people would publish a magazine, people would go to the library, consume that data. Then came newspapers, 1 day, maybe, 2 days at the most. Then came Facebook, a couple of hours. And then comes Twitter. 18 minutes is what they say. That's how old the data becomes, right? So depending on what your business is, you got to know, okay, which channel to use. And if you're into physical products like your friend, who's kind of done things with automation and stuck to the right position, it's not about only the way you get to success. It's about which business are you really in and what capabilities you need. So absolutely.
But calling on that expertise that it's such a strong reputation. Actually, I don't mean to make it sound not credible, because it's true, and that's why it's so important. If you guys are listening and want to get some straight from the knowledge base of and some real straight talk, I think you're already hearing it already. Obviously, you're going to want to make sure that you reach out and get some more information. I know you're well enough to know that friend or client, you'd be there to help if someone asks. But going back to my friend, and I won't mention his name, but his name is Smitty. He's going to love it. I'll tell him he's on the radio, and he'll freak over it. But but anyway, the point is that it's I don't think we really look past the veneer when we talk about digital. We deal with it where we touch it. And what doesn't it affect is where I'm going. Isn't it the inevitable when IoT is fully, go out 10 years, go out 15 years, when all of these things actually live up to their promise and hybrid, and then they're all put into a high-speed connective supercomputer, and would connect it to an unlimited, literally unlimited amount of, what do we call it? I don't even know if it's data because it gets so deep into prediction and attitudes and that kind of stuff. When all of that happens, let's try something like a cold call. Or what does innovation look like? And how does and you know this, but I can remember like 10 years ago hearing for the first time that there was a computer in a 18-wheeler, and most 18-wheeler, you know where I'm going, but they could call ahead, and the computer in the truck would say there's a clutch problem. It would contact, blah blah blah. And by the time he got to the next gas station or mechanic place, it was there waiting for him. Okay, well, so you can't just say Smitty's and hard products, and I certainly, let me take that back. You certainly could say, but it's an interesting perspective because I think it's even more challenging when it's not automated, don't you think?
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly. What happens is, and somehow currently we're doing a lot of work within this big data and predictive analytics. And if I were to summarize all that, and I think you laid it out pretty much, is that when you're trying to understand first, who the user is, that's, they said that when you figure out how to optimize and automate, those are computer systems, right? But when that intelligence begins to say, okay, who is the user, what are they really meaning, what are they asking for, which means what to optimize is what machine learning becomes, right? So whether you call it chatbots or deep learning or whatever have you, end of the day, you're trying to service a certain industry and a certain need, and you're saying that, okay, I've got the need, can I automate it more, and then can I anticipate that need? That's what it kind of boils down to. And then I think that whole vision, as you say, right, is the art of seeing the invisible. And a lot of people stick to what the business would need and make the right investments, whereas sometimes you tend to get overwhelmed, right, with all these tools. The idea is, what is the business that you're in? What is it that you need to do in terms of those value chain parameters? And then stick to the investments, whether it's CapEx or OpEx that you have, and then just kind of make sure that you're kind of turning that manual board that your friend is doing and kind of, getting towards the path towards success. So.
Well, we're kind of putting an overarch, generally speaking. Dive in a little bit about a couple of specifics, like, for example, top technologies. Which one are you really looking at that are going to impact change? Does it have to be the integration of all the things we've been talking about, or is there a couple
No, that's a good question. That's a good question because, like, if you were to look at the technology trends really that are kind of changing the way people are doing business, as I mentioned, so just take an example, let's say in hospitality, for example. You want to go to Bahamas, you're at a certain shop, you look at a QR reader with your phone, you just trap it, it tells you the right top 3 hotels, the car services, the excursion right there. So all your knowledge gathering, which happens way before a trip, is already happening digital, right? Once you book a travel, you'll have things like TripIt will always tell you where exactly put it on your calendar. So you've done all the planning, you've done all the booking. So pre-transaction, transaction, and during the trip, you can take pictures, upload things, talk to people about it, and Generation Y loves their mobile pieces. So if you would do that 5th P, I think the shift of power to the consumers has helped in that industry specifically, and the same is happening with retail. I was talking to a gentleman in the insurance industry, which is supposed to be the most conservative, right? And he's like, well, we need to start taking, media feeds from what we can do in Twitter and Facebook just to rate our users, because that's the kind of folks we're looking at, especially when it comes to things like automobile insurance and things like that. So the technology, I think, if I were to sum it up, one is, it's around data, as you said, whether it's big data, petadata, whatever you call it, so whether it's a Hadoop platform or anything else. Mm-hmm. The other is connected everything, which is IoT. And the third is how is it delivered, whether it's mobile, web, or whatever have you. You've got to look at those 3 pillars, and I make it simple, right? So, 3 pillars to hold the building. How is data coming in? How is it stored? And how is it consumed? As you simplify that, you can think of the solutions in that space.
I agree. It's hard to argue the point. I can remember I had an opportunity to do some work with the Hall of Fame, and one of the people that I had a chance to talk to was I can never pronounce his name correctly, but Spritzer, the guy that owns the New York site, Giants site. Do you know anybody that knows exchanges? He owns about 10 of them. He's really a super nice guy, but we got into a kind of a futuristic, what would it look like in his opinion and that kind of thing. And we actually started to talk about the ability to almost monetize innovation and use it as a currency. and actually have innovation. And where I'm headed, but that's an overused word, but I don't think it is. Talk a little bit about, do you have an opinion about the evolution of this? On the surface, the traditionalists will say, jobs today were up, jobs were up, down. When I would listen to the jobs report, I get it and I understand it. But I'm also thinking about when they say over 20%, 50%, I think you know where I'm going, these jobs are going to be gone. They're not going to be gone. They're going to be different. And you're going to have time, but you're also going to have technology, and you're going to have a lot of capacity. And there's a conversation about you being a brand, an individual, and empowering the individual. What do you call that? I've heard it called freelance economy. Several other things. What?
Oh, yeah.
And do you have a name? I don't mean to put you on the spot. It's one of those things. We'll name it now so we can get the thing started. I was mentioning to you later about vernacular doesn't keep up with technology speed. But
exactly. I mean, I actually think they say, right, data, and then knowledge, and then wisdom, right? So I think we're almost leaning towards the wisdom economy. To your point, I actually ran into a lady, and I'll give you a quick example. This lady, we were networking. She's 65, 70 years old, done a lot of work in retail, and I happened to talk to her about her business. I said, okay, what is it that you do? She said, you know what, now that I've retired, I love shopping is what I did, and I go to this store, a really high-end store, and I look at those sizes. And I have all these friends who talk to me about the colors and things. What I created was just a little table of saying, what are people talking about? And I would provide that data to the store. So much so that on Groupon and things that I created, I would get specific and special, promotions from that store, and I would pass it on to my friends. So I almost became a channel of conversation. I'm like, that in itself is that's using data for whatever you need to do. He who controls data becomes the center point of saying, okay, what is it that I can precisely control in terms of promotion, cross-selling, upselling? So to your point, whether you're 40, 50, 30, or 20, skills are almost the same. It all depends on how you kind of combine all that to kind of produce value, really.
Well, when we were talking about the New York Stock Exchange, I said, narrow it down. What business are you in? He said, I'm in the data business. And I thought, of course, if you think now it spoils to watch the news because every night, whether it's up or down, I know he's making money because he's got the data and the information. He's got the platforms. God bless him. I'm just saying that situation is ironic because you think it's so level of sophistication, economics, all the trading and all that kind of thing. What it boils down to is that you can make more money by gathering that information and perfecting it than almost anything else you could do. One last thing, and that is that artificial intelligence. I mentioned. I didn't mention Watson, but now you got maybe 10 different. Interesting factor now, I'm seeing the embedding of these tools, this capability. Your doctors are already using it, and lawyers are already using it. It's in the market, but they don't call it Watson or that. They just get the information and provide the service, but they don't have to obviously do as much work or as much research in order to devise it. What's your opinion on where's that going to go and what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years?
I truly think I'm so excited about that piece because at the end of the day, it's still using the systems, right? So someone said, as I just began to tell you that, when you try to identify who the user is, that's great. And then when you say, okay, what is the user really asking? They call it, NLP these days, natural language processing. And then adding semantic and context to that, okay, what did the user really mean, right? And that's key. So that's when you start predicting some of the inputs and what the outputs will be, kind of be looked at. So they're saying that there is systems of record. We always had that at one age. There was CRM, ERP, and things like that. Now there's systems of intelligence by these algorithms, and then there's systems of engagement, whether it's web, mobile, or chat. When you combine all these systems is when you get to a complete solution. And I think in the next 10 to 15 years, I don't think there'll be anything that we see in the movies. And there's a lot of debate by the really big wigs in that space that, it's evil or it's all good. I think we're not even close to that. But there's a lot of data wrangling behind those systems. But as we get more mature and start using these properly, I think the future is abuzz with a lot of these things that will happen. I mean, if you think about it, how you look at shopping, for example, right, Amazon or Alibaba, these guys have no inventory. They actually use those algorithms to really tell you what you need to buy. Same thing with experience on cars, right? The largest taxi company owns no taxis, Uber. The largest movie house today has no cinemas, Netflix, right? All of these guys use some of that and say, okay, what is it that the user needs? And I think you'll see more and more companies, even in the SMB space, leverage some of that for sure.
Well, one thing for sure, the Chinese, I think, say, may you live in interesting times. And they say it may be a wish for good or a curse. It's sort of like a challenge of interesting times. What a great time to be in the technology arena. and what a great place to be in. Can anything better or bigger? Or I mean, I hate to be political about it, but I remember when Trump was saying, "You're going to be winning so much, you're going to be sick of winning." He would say, the funny part is, every day it just seems like everybody wants to be here now, and it's really, really great, because you know what it is? It's the pioneers, it's the farming, it's the seeds that were planted, and the guys that pushed it. I would say in Broken at Time, my dad would say they pushed the spaghetti up the side of the hill and got it up to the top where everybody could feast over the top of it. We need to remember who did it for us. I'm real strong on the Hall of Famers and that kind of thing, but you belong there, and you're one of the players that helped made it happen for all of us. Thank you. Thank you for what you've done, but thank you for taking time today and sharing your thoughts. I'm going to love to have you back, but thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, Frank. I had a great conversation, and whoever wants to reach out to me can go to ashubhatia.com, and I'd love to chat more. Thanks so much, Frank.